I would like to greet everyone who's present today. Definitely, the legislative efforts is something that are on top of our agenda, and I would like to probably to briefly comment upon the things that have already been risen earlier today in part one and during panel one of funding. This is the problem that's been on our mind for a long time, and we've discussed it on many occasions. And probably you know our stance, and gradually, step by step, we were shifting more resources onto the community from other levels, from the land registry, where we decided that the land is something that the community should be in charge of, the state land, I mean, and this had to do with gradual permanent increase of the percentage on the income of the physical person, and the most recent decision during the martial law, there was something implemented. Something had been implemented late 2021, and during when the martial law was introduced. And speaking about the proportion, we were always for the basic level to be to get the most, because we know that on the regional level we have a lot of things on the regional level, but a lot happens on the basic level. So we have been discussing fruitfully, as I think, that administering of local in taxes, and it's good that we've written this issue again, and we've asked our colleagues. Our colleagues asked for the European experience in panel one. We do study the European experience, and we know that easy administration can be shifted to the local level, and this is a victory to once the martial law is over, and we need to go back to discussing of returning of administrative land tax. We can return it to the Rada level.
We could add a tax for real estate. That was an option for communities themselves to determine that, to have accounting of that, but understanding the scale of the structure, and there are new circumstances around that idea. At the same time, our position hasn't changed. We conduct the proper conduction discussion of the PDFO tax to be discussed. Who pays that tax? It's still a relevant issue. We've seen interesting processes. I won't give my opinion whether that's good or bad, but there is a market of those who want to locate an AFU brigade or other defense forces. They pay the most of that tax, and at the same time, I'd like to pay attention to the attention of local authorities that it's better to take best practices which exist in other communities to direct these other these additional PDFO amounts to the needs of the defense, improving the defense infrastructure, certain project which will allow your brigades which were registered in your region to feel better in regards to some military issues, which would be fair and honest, and it will be and a discussion of whether the personal income tax should be paid. Specifically, this topic is not closed, and I think we will be looking for a solution in that regard, for a compromise in regards to the funding situation in general. We understand that it is complicated right now, and if we were to move away from populist statements, everyone understands why, according to the Order 590, there is no access to a certain articles, and that the reason is very simple. The taxes collected in the Ukraine are now going to fund the AFU, the defense forces, and also we live on foreign investors' money pretty much, and discussing where it is to into his pocket is it's going. So this kind of discussion is not very productive. There is one pocket here, and that is the pocket of our nation's very survival. I understand it. Unfortunately, that's the situation right now, that all of the resources are being directed there. At the same time, we welcome the Ministry of Finance's practice, and we work with them step by step. Certain expenditures articles have been unblocked. We've seen great progress in this regard. You can talk about this, about that, about other certain things, and this will be a bit more liberalized as much as possible within the confines of these tremendous expenditures we have on safety and security and defense. In this regard, I'd like to talk about the basis, the topic of our discussion, the basics of the foundation of our future renewal. And I think it's a great topic for us not to review, but to uh, dot our I's and cross our T's. What kind of social contract we have between the local authorities and the state. Unfortunately, our constitution doesn't reflect that, and we don't know when that will be. But we understand that this is a question of time. If we arrive at that, if we discuss that in this contract and discussion, it has to be based on a European Charter of Local Authority, which is a basic document for us. All of it is written out clearly that that local authorities are right in a capacity of our communities to conduct their activity, and it also has certain points which are unregulated in our state. This is the careful protection we've been discussing about. We have said that there are some issues in regards to how to translate the term, but it is protection not to just stop someone, not to enclose someone somewhere. And the topic is that the statement that democracy begins from the bottom. It is true, and it sounds great within the walls of the Kiev City Council and the. I am from Kiev. I've spent all of my life here, so I can only welcome the fact that our city, which has been subject to Magdeburg law for the longest time, is a conduct such conferences a lot in this respectable hall. But we would like for this very example not to protect that, for instance, that the Kiev City Council should be an example for all councils of Ukraine, and the high standards of democracy and inclusive decision making based on the opinions of the people of Kiev ought to be always made. There are a lot of examples like that in Ukraine, because the charter is the common responsibility of any side, not just the state. Because I wouldn't reduce it all to the state level, because it's very simple to start politicizing this. And the question is, there won't be Korniienko, there will be other people in the parliament, but the issue won't go anywhere. And maybe other people will be mayors, God forbid, but there was a problem. The relationships won't go away if we don't resolve it and we don't regulate this. And until we understand this is a question of our common joint understanding. We are in a transitional period right now to the next years of heavy reconstruction, and nobody can be sure about this information. There's guarantees no Western journalists which can put anything they want in there. There is not the experts who have split the Russian Federation the map, but no one can be sure how much will this terrible northern monster threaten us. But we have to build a strategy on the fact that it is there and it will threaten us. So responsibility from the nation continues, and and the involvement, the practical level involvement of investment, returning people, creating workspaces, bringing people back. So the things we've talked about, all of these are come from the security issues and security, according to the Charter, the Constitution, and common sense. Other documents is guaranteed by the state. So the part of social contract is understandable. The state is to guarantee security, especially next to a terrible country across the border. So the country should understand their responsibility and be responsible for implementing their capacities and rights. Other things will be written out and achieved, like inclusivity, which dear moderators have been emphasizing, but I'd like to invite everyone who wants to hear to any profile committee meeting, and none of them were closed. All of the committees were open. All Wills Implement Association representatives of all four of them, regardless of our attitude towards their heads. I'm not talking about AFU right now. I'm now talking about the other one. The amount of experts working with our committee is also great. Also, separately, we have started active cooperation and involvement of experts and association members to discussions of profile issues of self-governance in other committees. We've figured out that the profile committee of local authority and public construction, etc., works on these basic foundational things, but taxes, crime, the rights and against the punishment for crime, environment, transportation, these are all committees which pass certain laws which influence the lives of these communities. Here it's important for this attitude to continue to support it, and the budgetary committee, I'm going to let us see Mr. Rostislav, because he usually regulates all of our issues, because this is the main committee which Rostislav represents. And we continue this movement, maybe it will be developing in the future in some institutionalized forms, but once it's enough for that associations invite us to discussions in profile committees. So to summarize once again, the parliament will keep working for local self-governance. It will be all done inclusively. We will look for consensus. If there isn't consensus, 90% of such issues aren't voted until there is consensus to include you on the self-government on the level on which these decisions are being drafted, not just made. The perfect situation is not when we're resolving these in the session hall, not just in the middle and some pressure on certain council members, but when the level of the committee of law development, but it's better yet on the expert group level, working group level, for it to arrive in the session hall fully formed. Of course, this includes work on the key directions, as you've mentioned at the start. This is constitutional change, finding resources for self-governance. This is updating the laws which require updating, such as resolving administrative territorial structures. Like as 2 years have gone by, some conclusions were made on what works, doesn't work, tuning which used to be done. This is, of course, the question of rebuilding on the basis which exists, on the mutual responsibility of the state for the future development strategy, doctrine, etc. It would be great to say something in that regard. On the other side, responsibility of local authority for territorial defense, the development of their communities, the quality of life, which allow us to rebuild our country, to return and bring our people back as soon as possible, and to create new people, because this is the issue of demographic issue. Other than nobody can resolve it other than the communities. Thank you very much for dear colleagues. I'm glad to answer your questions later.